Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be looking at viewports. So far you have been working on creating things in design layers, essentially drawing your sets. The question now is, how do we get those out of your computer and onto the page in a format that you can easily share with others? So let's jump in. So you'll see here I've got a little set of stairs that I made, and I want to get this out of here and share it with the other designers because it's important that they know what these stairs look like. Couple different ways. There are viewports, which we'll get into in just a second, but even if you want like a really quick start way of getting images out of here, one thing you can do is basically just take a snapshot of what we're looking at here. So to do that, you go up to File, Export, and we're going to export an image file. And it'll ask you what you want. You have a lot of different options on here. Let's go with current view because we've already set the camera where we want it. And you can change the resolution and the print size and all of that. But let's just agree to all of that. We'll call this viewport. Sure. There we go. And if we go into our File Explorer, you'll see now we have just a little image file of our stairs. The second way you could do this is to export a PDF. So let's go to our top plan view. So you'll see here, this is our page size. This is just a regular piece of paper. So we can export just this piece of paper if we wanted to. First, let's take a look real quick at some of the options for print sizes. Let's go up to File, and we'll go down to Page Setup. So right in here, you'll see you could choose whether it is going to be legal size, letter size, etc. And you can change all of that in here. If you're doing a large drawing, you can use D if you have like a plotter or something that can print really large sheets in a scene shop. But really, you can go in and you can set whatever you want this to be. 8.5 by 11. Sure. So that's our page size. So you can export this now. File, Export, PDF. And yeah, we'll just agree to all of that. And we'll call this Viewport PDF. It's not a viewport. I don't know why I'm naming it that. We'll just call that PDF. Save. And again, if we go into File Explorer, refresh, we have our little page. That's exactly what we saw on Vectorworks here. So those are the two quick and easy ways to get drawings out of here. Now, say you wanted different views of this staircase. Say you wanted to see what it looked like from the side. You could make a copy of it and just flip it onto its side. So now when I look at it from the top, we essentially have two of those. And you could drag it around and you could export that and you'd start to get a sense of what this shape looks like in 3 dimensions. But there are better ways. That's where viewports come into play. If I were to do this, it would be a lot of copying and pasting and rotating and things like that, which can get pretty onerous. So let's delete that, and now let's talk a little more specifically about viewports. So up until now, we have been playing mainly in design layers. Design layer is where you do all of your drafting. And then within that, we have different layers, and we also have classes. The next one over is going to be sheet layers. So sheet layers are where we actually drop all of these pictures that we're taking and arrange them nicely. It's kind of how we get to a final layout. So let me show you exactly what that means. Let's do a viewport of our stairs. So we'll come up to View. This is the first time we're kind of getting into this menu. We'll go up to View, and then we'll come down to Create Viewport. And now it'll ask you all sorts of questions. Specifically, where do we want to dump this? Create on Layer. We'll do a new sheet layer. And we'll call that sheet layer Viewport Stairs. You can put a number there and then you could title it here. Doesn't really matter. We'll be able to find it. And then it'll ask you, what do you want this viewport to do? So it'll ask you which layers should be included, which classes. We'll get to that in a little bit. It'll ask you the scale. 1/4 inch seems good. And it'll ask you what view you want to use, top plan. Underneath that, it'll ask you what kind of rendering you want it to be. For a lot of these early ones, I will usually do a hidden line or dashed hidden line. The nice thing is, once we create our viewport, we can always come back into the viewport and edit all of this over here in the object info area. So don't worry if you don't get this exactly right. Okay, and it will create our viewport. Now I'm not seeing anything in here. Let's click update. If it has the red around it, that red border, that means that something in the drawing needs to be updated. Either a change has been made or something like that. But here is our little viewport. And it's got the fancy looking titles and things like that. If I were to select this viewport, you can come in here and you can change the title, and we'll call this top view. And it's reflected there, and it includes the scale that you should have on every drawing as well. So that's a viewport. Something to note, I can't get into here and edit the actual geometry because essentially it's just a picture of what's happening on my design layer. So here's the design layer. I took a picture of that and I dropped it onto, if I tab over to sheet layers, I dropped it onto this sheet layer called Viewport Stairs. Now I could change other things about it in here. Say 1/4 inch is just too small because I can see how it's going to print out on a regular piece of paper. And I want it to be a little bit larger. So let's go up here. We can change it to 1/2 inch. Again, we get the red line around it. That means I have to update it now that I've made changes. So that's your basic viewport. So like I said, you can't get in and change what's in here, but what you can do is change your annotations, such as adding dimensions or adding titles, things like that. If you right-click on here, you can come down and you can edit annotations or you can edit the crop. I'll show you examples of those shortly. You can also just double-click on your viewport and it'll ask you what you want to edit. Let's edit an annotation. Okay, and I don't like how, I guess this is off to the side, so I'll just drag that over. And that's better. In here is also where you will do all of your dimensioning and such. So I can dimension in here. I'll grab my little dimension tool. 5 foot, 3 foot. And then you could, like that. And then I'll exit. And there's my drawing with all of my little dimensions on it. Here's something to note. When you are dimensioning, you have to dimension inside the viewport. The reason being this is in scale, right? So if I were to dimension outside of the viewport, let's do that. If I were to click there to there, pull it up, it's saying that it's only 2.5 inches. That's because on a sheet layer, you're working in 1:1 scale. So the page itself is only 8.5 inches by 11 inches. So if I'm dimensioning right here, it's going to give me something wonky, 1.5 inches probably. Yep. Because that's measuring on this full page. So you have to right-click or double-click on here to get in to edit annotations within the viewport. So you'll see now with the yellow box around your screen, that means that you're in editing something within the viewport. And that's where your dimensions are going to be completely accurate. And let's just go ahead and get rid of these dimensions now. And exit. And that's all saved up. So that's all well and good. It doesn't at this point seem like a huge time saver over just printing off your page here and dimensioning, because on here it's easier. You can just go ahead and dimension and it's going to come out to what's expected, right? Without having to enter a viewport to dimension it. But here is where viewports can become very useful. So let's go ahead and do another viewport. View, Create Viewport. But this time, let's leave this at 1/2 inch. This time, instead of doing a top view, let's look at it from the front. Okay. And there's my new viewport right here. So now I've got two viewports relatively quickly. You want to line them up, make sure that they're aligned properly. But so now I've got two. Another way you can duplicate, let's take this one, and I'll just hold Control while I drag it. And that creates a copy. Now for this one, I can come into my viewport object info here, and I can change my view in here as well. So I don't want this one to be front, I want it to be right. And there we go. Again, we'd want to probably line this up. So now we're starting to compile viewports pretty quickly. Let's do another one. Let's Control and just drag that out. Let's make this one an isometric view. So we'll scroll down over here. The view, let's do right rear. There we go. Now this one you'll see is in wireframe still. Say for this one I want to see it as a solid. I can change the render mode. So in here, it's currently in wireframe. Let's put that into shaded. And there we go. Go back up, hit update. Now we'll see it's getting a little tight, a little squeezy in here. So I'll right click, edit annotations. I'll draw this down. And you can also change the crop as well. So currently it's showing this object. If you were to, let me get out of annotations. Let's edit the crop this time. Double click, crop. Okay. And then you can draw a shape on here that is going to be the crop of your viewport. So if I were to draw a shape like this, that's all it would show me. You can change your crop, however. Let's get back in and put that crop back where it was. Edit crop. There we go. And update. So that's great. You're able to get some really good views. Here's where viewports become even more important. So again, I could lay this all out in my sheet layer and just create a couple of different things and take pictures and kind of put it around there. But right now, those are all different pictures of the same object. If I were to modify this object, with viewports, you don't have to go in and change every single snapshot. That will change on its own. So let's say I want to go in and modify this a little bit. I want to make it just a little more fancy. So I'll put some little notches in here to, I don't know, give the effect of a nosing. And I'll just finish this up real quick. So instead of jumping back in and redoing all of this on my design layer, if I jump over to my sheet layer now, all my viewports are in red. So that means they need to be updated. So I can select the viewport, click update, and you'll see these ones did it already. But what it does is it incorporates the new drawing into your viewports. So that's a real time saver. You can make one change on a design layer and it will update all of these. If you have several viewports that need to be updated, you can also just go up to View and then drop down to Update All Viewports, and that'll update all of them real quick. One other thing you'll notice in here too is that, so on this viewport, this looks pretty grainy, our little picture. So there's a couple different ways you can look at it. over in here it'll say like detail level, and you can change that to high. That doesn't really do much to fix the problem most of the time. What's actually holding you back on a sheet layer is that each page in your file has a native DPI. So sheet layers, let me double click on here, this stack. Sheet layers have a default DPI of 72. So you can actually change that. Let's change the DPI of this page, the page in general, to 300, which is probably overkill. Click OK. And now, if I click Update, you'll see the resolution is a lot better. So if you're getting weird, grainy images, it's probably your resolution in your sheet layer. So now we've got a whole bunch of drawings here that are starting to tell the story for us. So then now you'll want to take this. The next step is probably to package it up and send it off. What you'll want is probably a title block at some point. That's the fancy stuff down here that says this is what show it is. This is the scale of all the drawings, etc., etc., etc. So you can add those fancy title blocks coming down here to dimensions and notes. That's the little ruler icon. Let's open up that tool set. And let's get rid of attributes for now, so I have a little more room to work. And in here, you will see a title block border. So let's select that. And you'll see as you hold it over here, it'll put in a little dash line to show you where the title block is going to go. You can choose which kind of title block you want it to be. Again, all of your tools, you're going to have options up here. So let's pick a title block. Sure. There we go. And there's our title block. I don't want to spend too much time on title blocks, but just know that all of this stuff is easy to adjust. It has spots in here for all the important information that you want for your drawings. But you can absolutely edit these title blocks and make them a little smaller, a little more compact. You can change the size of the borders, all that different stuff. So with your title block selected, you can come over here to border settings. And in here you can change all of that stuff. You can also add in all your project data so that it will autofill on all subsequent drawings. It'll put the date in there correctly. It'll repeat the show title, the theater title, the venue, all that stuff, so that you don't have to do that every single time. But that is your border. For our assignments in class, I don't expect you to put that border on there. I'm really looking for you just to get a general sense of how to drop viewports onto a sheet layer from the design layer. So that's good. Again, just to reiterate, the most important part of viewports is that if you make a change in your design layer, it's going to make that change and be reflected. So let's go into my design layer. It's going to be reflected globally. So again, let's make one more change. We make it a teeny tiny staircase. Go back into sheet layers. Update all of my viewports. Update all. And there we go. All my drawings are quickly, efficiently changed. One more thing I want to show you about viewports. Let's go back into our design layer. Another way to get several viewports out at once would be good to go into View. And you can go into Create Multiple Viewports, which is right here. Let's try that. So from here you can select which views you want. So front, top, right, isometric, that sounds good. We'll do this one in 1/4 inch scale. And we'll just say, okay. And they all need updating. And there we go. It gives you all those different views. So that's how we would do something like that with a really simple staircase. Let's go ahead though, and let's jump in and take a look at something a little more complicated. I think that'll give you a better sense of how you can use this. So here's that little set that we've kind of been working on and playing with throughout the last couple of lessons. Let's go ahead, let's look at our layers. Let's turn on our house and all of that stuff. Oops, back wall's in the way. If I want to get rid of that back wall, I've made it its own class. So I can just turn it off here. Now I can get my camera down in here. And I don't need my grid on, so I'll turn that off. It's up here in Quick Preferences. And I'll turn off my page boundary for now. So here's our set. If I wanted to start by just taking a nice perspective shot of this, that might be a good start. So we'll come here, we'll put the camera where we like it. We'll put it down here where the audience sight lines are going to be. And let's go ahead and do View, create Viewport. And instead of picking top, bottom, etc., 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 we're just going to go with Custom View because we've already set the view. So this will take a viewport of exactly where the camera's at right now. We'll do it in 1/4 inch. And we're going to put it on a new sheet layer called Set Viewports. Why not? Okay. And then it will take us over to that new sheet layer. And here is our image. Couple things we might want to do on here. Let's go in, let's right click, and let's go into Edit Crop. And let's just make this a little tighter. So I really just want to see that. And let's update. As we scroll in, still it's a little clunky. So again, let's look. That might be that DPI issue. So set viewports. If I jump over to sheet layers, let's double click this stack. And you'll see, yep, we're at 72. Let's change that to 300. It's always a balancing act selecting DPI for a page. If you make it too high, it's going to take forever to render anything. If you make it too low, it's going to look clunky. So let's zoom in here and click Update. And there we go. That looks a lot sharper. And I'll probably get in, edit annotations, and I would bring this up into here. Okay, so there's a nice little just kind of rendering of what the set's going to look like. Let's go back in, though, one more time to our design layer. We'll go into the set layer, which is where all my set is at. And when you create a viewport, whatever options you have turned on or off down here is what's going to show in the viewport. So if I have my house turned off here and the proscenium turned off, if I were to do a viewport now, it would look just like this. But from within the viewport, you can get back in and turn them on again. I'll show you that in just a second as well. So here's our set. Let's go to Top Plan View, and let's do just a ground plan. So I want to take a picture of this as my ground plan. Go to View, Create Viewport, Top Plan View, that's correct. And I want to dump it onto Set Viewports, yeah. And 1/4 inch scale, that all looks fine for now. And I'll change this to Hidden Line. Click OK. And let's just pull this off of here so we can see a little bit better. So there is our ground plan. It's a little muddy. There are parts of this I don't necessarily love, but we can clean that up. Let's go ahead in here, and with our viewport selected, over here in Object Info, you can start changing things. So layers and classes. I can turn layers and classes off right inside here. Let's go to layers. And I don't want to see soft goods, because right now they're really kind of muddying the picture. So I can turn that off. They have these little symbols here where I had put in those people. So I can turn people off. Let's go to classes. And I'll turn those off. There we go. And there's a nice clean ground plan. If I wanted for whatever reason to see the entire building, I could do that as well. I'd go back into layers and I'd add in my house. So that's another reason that I like to put a lot of my different stuff on different classes so that I can toggle them on and off pretty easily. I try to make a lot of these different components. For example, I probably wouldn't want moldings in my ground plan simply because the moldings are 10 feet up in the air. They don't actually impact the floor space. So here all they do is serve to muddy the picture. So I can collect this. Let's go to classes. And I can just turn off all of my trim work. That's set moldings. Go ahead and turn that off. Now I have a much cleaner picture. You'll also notice that I had created these walls using the wall tool. So it went ahead and dropped in the doors and the swings and all that stuff for me when I'm in a top plan view. If you built your walls and different objects without using the wall tool, just using basic geometry, that's perfectly fine, but you may need to come in and add in the doors later. And you would do that by right-clicking or double-clicking, and let's go into Edit Annotations. And then you can just use your drawing tools as usual. So you would come in here. I'll draw the door coming to this other side. Whatever that's going to be. I'm not really stopping to do the math here. And you would draw them in like that. But that's how you can get in and do that. And then you can exit Viewport Annotations when you're done. Again, the beauty here is that things will auto-update. So let's go back into our set real quick. And let's say I want to put the chair over here and the couch over here. And I want my door over here a bit. So that now we're looking at a completely different stage picture. If I go into Sheet Layers, Viewports, and then I select everything, make sure they're updated. This one auto-updated, but you'll see the changes I made are reflected in here as well. Now, this is your ground plan. If you wanted to do an elevation, just a simple front elevation, that's easy to do as well. Let's actually take this, I'll hold Control and just drag it over. And let's just modify this. So let's change this from top plan view into a front view. And I'm getting all the seats and stuff in the way, so I'll want to clean that up. Let's turn off some layers. I'll turn off the house and call that good. And then let us edit the annotations because this title block is still floating way down there. I'll bring that up. There we go. And then I can make this look a little nicer if I wanted to. It's still in wireframe. So I can change that into, let's go into Final Quality Renderworks. And it takes a little bit longer to update. Let's actually put that into, let's just do shaded. And we'll update that. And so we can also edit our crop a little bit. Let's crop it down to just the size of theater. And I forgot my trim work. I took that off in the previous one, so I'll add that right back in. Because now I do want to see it. Set moldings are going to be turned back on. Update. And so this is what we call a front elevation. It's not in perspective. It's a straight orthogonal view. And that's a front elevation of the stage. So we have a kind of a nice rendering here. And then we also have a elevation and a ground plan. This one, let's see, we can update this one since we've moved stuff. It won't change the camera angle at all, but it will move the furniture and the door just like we had. So you see here we're starting to build a series of images that will really help to tell the story of what this set is going to look like. And in formatting this, I would probably change my print size, so I'd want to fit all of this onto essentially 1 or 2 sheets. So I could go up and I can go to my page setup. And let's say I'm sending this to a shop that I know has a big printer. So I'll make it a 34-inch by 22-inch drawing. And then you can place all of your stuff in here. You can add your title block. Let's do there we go. And I can drag my drawings around to make it look nice and pretty. So it's not perfect as an example, but it gives you a sense of what you can do with viewports. The last kind of viewport you may want to do is probably going to be a section viewport. So let's take a look at that real quick. So essentially what a section does is it cuts right down the middle, or through any line really, and gives a side look at something. A good way to visualize this is actually with our clip cube. If you don't have clip cube up here, you can turn it on here under quick preference settings. Here's clip cube. You can also find it under view all the way down to the bottom, clip cube. Let's turn clip cube on and I'll show you what a section does. So to use the clip cube, you'll see as soon as I turn it on, it has this little box around everything. If I select that box, now as I hover over a face, it'll turn red. Once it's red, I can push that face. And what that does is gives you sort of a cut-in look there. If we're looking at it in orthogonal from the right, you'll see we've cut in, and it gives you a really good profile. This is the tool we would use to give to lighting designers so they know what their throw distances and angles are and all that different stuff. So that's what a section does, is it'll give you a cut down the middle view of an object. So that's a clip cube. It's actually an interesting little tool. I don't use it much, but you can actually do quite a bit with it. So I can pull that back out. It's non-destructive, so it's not going to ruin anything. If I take this and I start shrinking up this way, it's not going to do anything. But you can actually, you can rotate it so that you can push at an angle into walls, etc., etc. Let me get out of there. So it's a good tool for visualization. And you could actually, if you're pushing this all the way through here to your center line, once it's there, if you go ahead and you have a surface selected that turns red, you can just right-click and create section viewport right from your clip cube. And it'll open up the same dialog box. I'm not going to do that now, though. I really just wanted to show you the clip cube to give you a sense of what a section actually is. So I'll turn off my clip cube, and everything's back to normal. So let's bring in our 3D house and everything. Turn on my back wall again. That's under classes. So now we have the full picture of the theater here. Let's go to a top plan view. And what we'll do now is a section viewport. So we will go up to View, Create Section Viewport. And then you'll basically draw a line, which is the line where you're cutting everything in half. I'll go right down the middle. It really depends on the set and what's going to tell the story best, but for this practice, let's go ahead and just go right down the middle. So one click to start it, a second click to set the line, and then it's going to ask which way do you want to look at this. So I'll click this side. Okay. So up here again, it'll ask you where it's going to export it to. Yeah, sure, viewport sheet is fine. We'll keep it at 1/4 inch because that's what everything else is in. And let's go ahead and just click OK for now. And it is jumbled up here with all these other viewports we've got. That's all right. And here you go. So this is our look at our section if we were to cut it right down the middle. It's okay. I don't love the way it looks. I personally just don't like that hard black in there. I prefer a hatch for objects that are being cut. But you can actually edit all of that. So the first time that you create a section viewport, what Vectorworks does automatically is it creates a new class for you called section style. And that's where you can style what your sections are going to look like. So if you right click in here, we can edit section style. So in here you'll see the fill is a solid black. Let's do a hatch. That's fine. The pen, that's pretty thick on the pen. So I'll probably take that down a little bit. And yeah, we'll say that's good for now. And again, my viewport now needs to update. And there we go. So that gives you a pretty good cross-section of where we're at. And what will happen later on is then the lighting designer will come in and say, oh, all right, I know I have a pipe here, and I know we have a pipe here, and I know we have a pipe here. So they can start drawing lines and saying, all right, what are the actual sight lines? If this is the trim, what am I going to be able to shoot under to get the angles I need? So that's why a lighting designer needs a full theater section so that they can get a sense of what their throws are going to look like. So that's why a section should be included with pretty much every package. You can clean this up a little bit if you wanted to. Let's go ahead and clean it up just in annotations. So I'll pull this down a little bit. Now I don't like how this doesn't have a floor right now, so you can just draw in if you wanted to, little parts to complete the drawing. I like usually putting everything on like a little slab. That, and we can fill that with a hatch. But you can get in and you can draw all of that as well as dimension it in annotations. But that is essentially what your section viewport is going to do. Now if we go back to our design layer where we drew it all, you'll see now this little marker. This little stamp is what tells you where the section is taken. So that's why it drops, whenever you create a section, it drops these little stamps on here so that you can see, you can reference this to know where exactly your section is being cut. And I can move this as well. So say I wanted this section let's move the whole section over to here. So now it's looking across this line over. So it's not actually going to catch any of the set in it. If I go back here and update that, you'll see that the section has moved. So now it's looking from a different point in the theater. And so it's not actually seeing any of the set. So you can get in and you can move where that, basically that camera that you're using for your section, you can move where that is. And I just put it back there. And that's really the basics of viewports. There's a lot more complicated stuff you can do. You can really tweak these and make them sing. But for now, where we're at, the biggest thing is just being able to tell the story clearly to other designers. And so just knowing a few of these basic operations, such as how to create a front elevation, how to create a ground plan, how to create a section, those are the basics. Of course, you can go in and you can mess with all the little stuff. USITT has guidelines on, what the fill for a section hatch should be, and they have line weights and things like that. But for just starting out, I think it's important just to understand the concepts first. So that should do it for now. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.